Amen. All right, so we're in the book of Daniel in the Old Testament. We've got 2 more weeks, this week and next. We're in Daniel chapter 11. And Daniel chapter 11, if you remember, is the vision that the scene that was described in Daniel chapter 10, like it was trying to keep it from coming, this vision. There was this cosmic battle between angels, good and bad angels, as the angel from God was trying to get this vision to Daniel. And you would ask, well, why would there be such a battle for this message to go through? And it's because what we read today is spoken so clearly. It is the most clear prophecy probably in the entire world and definitely in the Bible. There's probably 135 different prophecies that are spoken of here that were fulfilled, written hundreds of years before the actual events took place. Any person that can read and think could take a history book in one hand and Daniel chapter 11 in the other hand and say, oh, that's that. In other words, while what we read does not name names, it describes situations in countries that are clearly that is that. And so what is the power of that? Well, the power of it is that people have to admit that this is a divine book. That this is a divine book from God. It's just not people. And then you kind of extrapolate that from that and say, oh no, that means I have to deal with God. I can't just put them up on the shelf, or I can't put them away in the closet, or I can't just visit them here and there. God is active and real and moving, not only in life and history out there, but in me. And so that's why it's so powerful. In other words, you can't argue with reality. And that's what's so powerful about this book. Skeptics really attack this chapter because it is so powerfully lays out the events. No one says it's not describing the events. They just argue, well, was it written when you say it's written? So the primary argument of skeptics is that Daniel chapter 11 had to be written in the 168 BC time, where the last events that have taken place took place. In other words, you wrote them after the fact. Here's the problem with that, is that the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Hebrew scriptures, were finished in writing in 285 BC, hundreds of years before. And here's the problem, is that we know that Daniel chapter 11 and actually all of the book of Daniel was a part of that Septuagint in 285 BC. And so that argument is kind of actually pushed away pretty quickly, whether you're a believer or not. This is historical fact. And so Daniel chapter 11 puts it in places like, look, you can play games, you can play all you want, you can create other scenarios, but this is a divine book from God. And he speaks in time and history. And so it doesn't leave any middle ground. Similar to this, a favorite story on Long Island, so Long Island, New York, concerns a man at West Hampton Beach who received in the mail a long-awaited barometer. And this was September 21st, 1938. And he had been just waiting for this thing because it was of the highest quality. And when he opened the package, the barometer was pointing down to 28, where it said tornadoes and hurricanes. And he shook the thing and tapped it, and it just stayed on hurricanes and tornadoes. And you're like, man, this thing is terrible quality. I thought it was the best. And so he packs it up, writes a scathing note. This thing doesn't work. I can't believe your ads and those sorts of things. And then he went into the city, into New York, and came back the next day. Well, when he came back the next day to his house in Long Island, his house was gone because a hurricane came through. And so he tried to fight reality as much as he could, but it said exactly how things were, the exact environment. And so it is with Scripture. We can fight it all we want, but it's true and it's from God. And so we're going to read about 5 kings in Daniel chapter 11. All of their names, or given names here, start with A. And we will summarize a lot of it, because if we're to read through the verses, they're just so detailed and so technical, and they don't add names. And so it's better to just summarize what's happening to get the bigger picture. But I encourage you to read it outside of this on your own. So the first king is Ahasuerus, or Xerxes, who is the king of Persia. And it says in verse 1 of Daniel 11, "And in the first year of Darius the Mede, I took my stand to support and protect him. Now then, I tell you the truth, 3 more kings will arise in Persia, and then a 4th who will be far richer than all the others. When he has gained power by his wealth, he will stir up everyone against the kingdom of Greece." And so this prophecy was written in 536 BC. So it was just 6 years later that the first prophecy was fulfilled. And it was the prophecy that we read here, which is about 3 more kings will arise in Persia. And then the 4th king was this King Xerxes. And you can read about King Xerxes in the Old Testament book of Esther, right? The most famous line from Esther is, "For such a time as this," that God may have just had you in this time for such a time as this. And so King Xerxes was all about supersizing everything. I mean, he had a feast for his servants and for his officials. You can read in the first chapter of Esther that it lasted 180 days. Can you imagine having Thanksgiving every day for 180 days? Oh, the food comas. And, that's how we felt on our road trip. If you're having to eat a lot of fast food out and you're not just getting the home cooked simple stuff, you're just like, I'm done. I don't know what to eat anymore. They had this feast for 180 days. He was just like, I'm going to do the feast of all feasts. He also marched into Greece with an army of 2.6 million men. And he lost still. How? I don't know. But he went back and he just supersized everything. And yet you wonder, because something that we need to look at with all of these 5 kings is we get kind of ratcheted up with drama. I had somebody say to me recently, said, "You're so dramatic," because I've made a big deal out of something. And I mean, isn't that kind of how we end up being today? Like the drama of the day, the negativity, or what bad thing happened, or different, we just kind of get ratcheted up with this. And we have to ask ourselves, is that really where I want to live? Like, is that where I'm meant to live, where there's just all this stuff going on? And what we do is we end up working on the outside of ourselves and everything that's happening in the big things. And we end up self-medicating with the next big thing, right? Instead of dealing with the inside of ourselves and the things that are happening there, the things that have happened to us and the things that we've done, and maybe the hurt and the pain and the lonely and you can go on and on. We look to the next big thing on the external that's going to feed us ignoring what we need to do on the inside. And so the next king after Xerxes is Alexander. So this would be Alexander the Great, right? You probably learned about him in school. Verse 3, it says, "Then a mighty king will arise who will rule with great power and do as he pleases. After he has risen, his empire will be broken up and parceled out toward the 4 winds of heaven. It will not go to his descendants, nor will it have the power he exercised, because his empire will be uprooted and given to others." So first we see about Alexander's great power. And we've read previously about about Alexander in Daniel chapter 2, that he was the head of the Greek kingdom, and then also Daniel chapter 8. But by the age of 32, he conquered the known world. He conquered all the way from Europe, all the way to India. And he ended up, it's reported, in his tent where he was in Babylon, weeping, because he had nothing else to conquer. His whole identity was in conquering. And there was nothing else to conquer. He had conquered everything. And instead of finding deeper substance than what the real need of his soul was, it's reported that he became a drunkard, and he was very competent at promiscuity and just any sort of thing that would bring pleasure. That's what he wanted. That's what he lived for. And ultimately, he died at 32. He conquered the whole world. I mean, he was the top of the top. And yet God was in his life too, right? Like we talked about a few weeks ago how God actually gave him a vision of the high priest of Israel before he got there, and then how he read about himself in the book. Like when he got to Jerusalem, he read in the book of Daniel himself. They showed it to him. And so he knew that there was God that knew him. And yet he couldn't turn his heart over because he lived for conquering. He lived for something else. Who knows what the great need was? But then came his breaking. It says in verse 4, after he is risen, so at the top of his reign, he died. His kingdom shall be broken up and divided towards the four winds of heaven. So history details that his kingdom went to four different generals. North, south, east, west was kind of similar to where it was. The two prominent ones were the north and the south kings, and they basically overtook the other ones. And so verse 6, we see, after some years, they will become allies. The daughter of the king of the south will go to the king of the north to make an alliance, but she will not retain her power, and he in his power will not last. In those days she will be betrayed together with her royal escort and her father and the one who supported her. So that's the word of God, Daniel chapter 11, and then here's history. History is that King Ptolemy from Egypt, King Ptolemy II, gave his daughter Berenice to Antiochus II of Syria to foster an alliance between these two countries. The problem is Antiochus II divorced his first wife and then took Berenice in as his wife, and then they had children. Well, at some point, his first wife, Laodice, she had Berenice and her child killed. And at some point, Antiochus remarried Laodice. I don't know if he did it out of fear or what. But he remarried her, and then after he remarried her, she killed him. And so, in other words, the alliance did not take. That's real life, and then based upon what we read in verse 6. But what happened is that then Berenice's brother took vengeance. That's why verse 7 through 8 say, one from her family line will arise to take her place. He will attack the forces of the king of the north and enter his fortress. He will fight against them and be victorious. He will also seize their gods, their metal images, and their valuable articles of silver and gold and carry them off to Egypt. For some years, he will leave the king of the north alone. So Berenice's brother, Ptolemy III, attacked and plundered Syria. This is written history. And one of the key things he did is he took their gods and all of their family traditions and things, and he took them back to Egypt. And so what this makes me think of is we're watching these big kind of snapshots of life and history and these things, and you see different kings come on, but these guys, they've passed, and then somebody else ruled in their place. And it made me think of fireworks, that are still going on, probably in your neighborhood too. And, if you think of a firework, everybody comes out to look at them, right? Boom, bang, bang, bah, and the smoke, and they grab tons of attention. But, after the smoke fades and after somebody runs out of their stock of fireworks, what do you see? If you look up, you see the stars. And the stars don't make a big bang, don't make a big boom, but they're really good at shining, maybe not as bright close to us, but they're there. And we have all kinds of people in our lives and throughout the world, whether they're artists. I mean, how many people, songs you can remember, that one song you play and you're like, well, I want to listen to another song they have. You're like, no, I don't. Because they have the one hit wonder. You have actors or actresses, or you have politicians, or you have people in your life where they started well, but they ended bad. I mean, the world, if you follow the track of the world, you can start well, but you will not end well. You'll be like a firework. Man, that was amazing. But then when the smoke fades, it's gone. And yet you look at the stars. The stars are the ones that are doing things the way God created. And so which sky do you want to shine brightly in? The one that's there for a moment in the pop, or do you want to be there for time after time after time and do things God's way? It's a good question for all of us. Now next in verse 10, Antiochus III, called Antiochus the Great, this is about 223, 187 BC. It says, his sons will prepare for war and assemble a great army, which will sweep on like an irresistible flood and carry the battle as far as his fortress. So Antiochus III of Syria, so this is the north king, okay? He had mostly defeats in his battles with Egypt. I mean, just one after another. He just couldn't pull a victory together. You ever been a part of a sports team like that? I was telling my sons, I coached high school football in San Diego for several years, and the last year that I coached, we lost every game. Every game. We came close a few times, and so we just lost every game. And it was just a streak of loss after loss. Well, this king had loss after loss, but then all of a sudden he had a streak of victories. And it says he will determine to come with his might of his entire kingdom, in verse 17, and will make an alliance with the king of the south. And he will give him a daughter in marriage in order to overthrow the kingdom, but his plans will not succeed or help him. So from history, you'd know the person of Cleopatra, right? That name sound familiar? This is who this speaks of. And she was given in marriage, believe it or not, at 11 years old to the king of the south's son, Ptolemy V, who was 12 years old. So, man, I mean, I needed so long to actually get mature enough to get married. You know, I couldn't imagine getting married at 11 or 12. But the goal was for her to take over Egypt, so that the king of the north would finally beat them by having his daughter there. Well, she actually sided with her husband, and the plan didn't work. And so in his rage, what he did is he decided to attack the outliers of Egypt, the coastal communities, which is described in verses 18 and 19 of chapter 11. It says, then he will turn his attention to the coastlands and will take many of them, but a commander will put on an end to his insolence and will turn his insolence back to him. After this, he will turn back towards the fortress of his own country, but will stumble and fall to be seen no more. So what happened is he actually went back to his own country and destroyed the temple of Jupiter, which is the god that they worshiped. And the people got so angry that they killed him. And so he was just wiped out. And so again, this describes it here, and then we see it in real life. And now his son that took over, there were so many great war debts that were in place that he needed to, get the finances of the country back together. And that's why verse 20, it says, his successor will send out a tax collector to maintain the royal splendor. And in a few years, however, he will be destroyed, yet not in anger or battle. And so, clearly, and now some versions translate there, they actually translate about going to Jerusalem or to the Holy Land to get taxes, which is what he did. So the NIV misses it a little bit here, I think, as far as that. But you look at this and you may zone out at this point. You're like, well, these are big picture events. What does this have to do with me? Well, if God is this intricate in how he works in history to bring about what he wants and has, and he knows the future, I mean, think about this. You probably remember most of today, different things that have happened. But then think about your past. You remember some things of your past. One thing I did on our trip is I drove to the neighborhood, or I drove to the town that I was born in. And we were in that area. And then I drove to the neighborhood that I lived in for the first 4 years. Actually, it wasn't the neighborhood. I thought it was, and it wasn't. And we didn't have time to go there, so let me be totally honest. But I have certain memories of all those different places. But I don't remember everything. So think about your past. Here's the thing that we know from this that we read here. Know this, that God knows the future and your future better than you know your past. Like he knows all the details of the future, and he knows what's going to happen. He knows the good and the bad things that are going to be throughout your life. He knows the curves and all the different things that are going to come up. And so as we link ourselves to something or someone in life, what about this one? Because he's just not one that knows everything, but he's one that loves us. He's the one that's for us. He's the one that made us the person that we are and the person that we are to be. He made us to be. He knows us intimately. There's not one day that you've been alive that God has not been there in speaking to you and working in your life. And I know, too, because I have moments, too, where I'm like, man, God, why'd you let this happen? What about that thing? What about that thing? And it's interesting. We focus in all the things that we can highlight and say that went wrong, and we blame things on God, and yet many of those things are people, right? And yet, what about all the things that God's doing that we don't even know that he does for us? I've found that as I've gotten to know God more and more, I've realized that he's working in ways that I never imagined. He's actually shown me things from my life. He's like, hey, you remember that? That was me. Hey, you remember that? That was me. Oh, you stepped in there, Lord. So that balances out quite a bit when we get to know his heart. And so in verse 21, we see Antiochus Epiphanes, and he's somebody we focused on quite a bit several weeks ago. And he's one of the most evil, brutal, nasty people that ever walked the face of the earth. And he was really kind of shamed by the Romans. The Romans were coming to they were beginning to take great power, and as he attacked Egypt, he was turned away, and it was just, it was really bad for him, and he turned all of his anger and his fervor on the Jewish people. And we read how, he went into their temple, and he actually put up an image of Zeus in their temple. And he actually sacrificed a pig in the temple. And he made it so they couldn't do any sacrifices, but Judas Maccabeus and the Maccabees, they actually said, enough, we're not doing this anymore. And they fought back, and then they had the miracle that is celebrated by Jews today, which is Hanukkah. But he just did horrible things to people. And he is the closest thing to the end-time Antichrist that we see. It's said of him in verse 21, he will be succeeded by a contemptible person who has not been given the honor of royalty. He will invade the kingdom when its people feel secure, and he will seize it through intrigue. And so, think about him, though. And, bully for sure. Way beyond bully. But maybe think about somebody in your own life that maybe from your childhood, like I drove by one of the homes I lived in the central coast of California, and my dad and I lived there, and I remember looking across the street and remembering this kid, Jason, that used to, man, he found every week, he found new ways to beat me up. And I'm like, there's that spot, right? So I think of him, and but think about somebody in your own life, past or present, or think of the most horrible things that people have done on the earth, and think of Antiochus Epiphanes here, and think about how different they would be if they had learned to receive love, or if they had learned to love. Like if they had developed those muscles instead of the muscles that they had. Because, isn't that the good news that we have as Christians? Isn't that the good news that Jesus has come to make things right between people and God, and then also people and people, that actually he can deal with our real stuff? If he can't deal with Antiochus, if Antiochus couldn't have been changed, then what are we doing? And if he can't change the real you in me, then what are we doing? Yet isn't that the truth and the good news that Jesus has come and that he can change the real me. He can reach the real me. And the change that he makes is he increases our capacity to love and be loved. I mean, think of the greatest problems in your family or my family, or the greatest problems in your neighborhood or my neighborhood, or in our nation or our states. Aren't the really root of things is that people lack the muscles to receive love or to love? That's at the root of everything, is that our ability to receive love and to give love. And so I wonder how he might have been changed if he had just received and given love. The next person and the last king is the Antichrist. And so everything that we just read through, and again, I encourage you to walk through those, everything we just read through has already happened, and it's written in history. And you say to yourself, well, okay, all right, I agree. But now here comes faith. Here comes like, well, wait a minute. Now there's a portion that hasn't happened yet. And it speaks of the last of the 5 kings, which is this person that's described as the Antichrist, a person that actually embodies really stuff that's in us. Say, what? In me? Yeah, I mean, the things I'll read to you that are descriptive of the Antichrist, they're all things that if we just take things to its end that we all have had our feet in the river of, we would end up this way too. The Antichrist is just unhindered and just does whatever he wants. And so you and I, if we just did that as well, it's also the picture of really ultimately just the way of the world. Like, hey, where does this train go? I'm hooked up. Where does this train go? This is where the train of the world goes, is it's embodied in this person. And so verse 36, it says, the king will do as he pleases. He will exalt and magnify himself above every god and will say unheard of things against the God of gods. He will be successful until the time of wrath is completed, for what has been determined must take place. So the Antichrist will do on a huge scale what all do apart from Christ. So he will do what he desires, just like, I'm just going to do whatever. Verse 36, he'll deify himself. I mean, isn't that what you and I would do, that if we just decided there's no God, well, I might as well just make myself God. He'll defy God. He'll disregard all religion. He'll rely on military power primarily. He'll war against nation powers. He'll acquire great wealth. But then now listen to this. This is key. He will be defeated and no one will help him. Think about that. This figure is the figure in all of the world when this time takes place. And everybody is following, oh, you're the greatest and you're just awesome. And now some hold back, yeah. But everybody's just, you're the greatest, you're on top of the world. You're amazing, you can do whatever you want. But in his end, there's not one person that will help him. Isn't that a picture of just, if we just live our own way, if we just do our own thing, if we just got everything that we ever wanted, and yet you lose everything? He probably will say, is that it? Like, I thought it would feel different. You ever had that? You reach a goal, or you get something, or you have something, or you get a new car, get a new house, get a new relationship, get money, or get just like, I thought it would be more substantial. I thought it would really anchor me. And yet really it's kind of like, man, there's got to be something more. Got to be something more. And yet, if we focus on all the drama, if we focus on all the different things happening in the world, if we make all the ups and downs of the world our goal, and we decide to join and that's our home that we camp out in, then this is the ultimate place that we get to. Now, C.S. Lewis, a writer, if you haven't read his stuff, I encourage you. He's written books that are called children's books, but I think they're much more, like the Chronicle of Narnia and all sorts of books like Mere Christianity and different things. Just brilliant. But he wrote one book called The Screwtape Letters, and it's a scene of a senior demon writing to a new demon, his nephew, saying, hey, this is how you keep people from experiencing the love and all that God has for them so that they don't become who God made them to be. And so the enemy, as they write, it would be God, and then we're the patient or the one that they're working on. And this is what the uncle writes to them. And if this doesn't describe our time, it described this time back in the 20th century, but it surely describes our time, doesn't it? My dear Wormwood, be sure that the patient remains completely fixated on politics, arguments, political gossip, and obsessing on the faults of people they have never met. This will serve as an excellent distraction from advancing in personal virtue, character, and the things the patient can control. Make sure to keep the patient in a constant state of angst, frustration, and general disdain towards the rest of the human race in order to avoid any kind of charity or inner peace from further developing. Ensure the patient continues to believe that the problem is out there in the broken system rather than recognizing there is a problem within themselves. Keep up the good work, Uncle Screwtape. Boy, the spirit of this age has sure learned this. Because isn't that the treadmill that we so easily run on? There's a song by a band that I enjoy, band Switchfoot. They have a song, it says, this is your life. Are you who you want to be? And it says it again, this is your life. Are you who you want it to be? And it says, this is your life. Is it everything you dreamed that it would be when the world was younger and you had everything to lose? It's a good question, isn't it? Like, is your home where you're camping out, like, is it really going to bring about who you want to be? Is it all that you really dreamed of? Psalm 90 verse 1 says, Lord, you have been our dwelling place throughout all generations. That we can actually dwell in God. We can actually make our main dwelling in God. And as we dwell in him, as we make our dwelling in him, we become like him and become the people that we were made to be. I mean, all the desire in you to have something perfect or to have something right, or this feeling of you're made for more, this feeling of like you have a message to share, or this feeling of things must be more beautiful, or the feeling for just something that is just utopia and just good, like that feeling is from God because he made you for that. That cry to you just like, why are you just so distracted? Why are you spending all your time on things that don't satisfy? Psalm 91 verse 1 through 2 says, whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. Some of you today, that word rest is so fleeting. It's so fleeting. Even though you rest, you don't rest. Your soul is weary from running from God. Come to him and find deep rest in him. Lay down your burdens, lay down your sorrows, lay down your rebellion. Lay down your fight against him and receive love. Then it says, I will say to the Lord, of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. And so, with all the drama, all the things that God says have happened and that will happen, where is your home? And is it worthy of you? Man, I never knew it. Like I drove by some of the places as a kid that I just was a total idiot. Just so wild. Totally out of control. And I saw those and I was like, oh Lord, you really did rescue me. And I remember being in places after I met Jesus. And all of a sudden, whoa, I see this way different than before. This is not worthy of me. You know, some in here, you've been told for so long, so much of your life that like your expectation is just so low. It's just way down here. Like how you see yourself. It's because of the choices you've made and because of the things people have said to you or done. And yet, you are a child of the King. You are a child of the living God. You are created, and he not only created you, but he made you special compared to all the rest of his creation. And he puts his life in you. And yet, apart from Christ, that life is not in you. But that when you surrender your life to Christ, God shares his actual life with you. You are filled with the Spirit of God. And as you yield to him, and as you surrender to him, and you allow him to lead in your life, you become more and more alive. And you become the person that you were made to be. And that it's all where we choose to dwell. You know, the enemy would have us just wallow in the mud. And yet God calls us much higher. David said he took him out of the miry clay and set his feet on a rock. And so have your feet set on a rock today. Make a decision for Christ today and then do it again tomorrow. And live for him. Lord, we thank you for your word. We thank you that you have set us apart for you, God, to live for you and to walk with you. And Lord, as we look at these things in many ways terrifying, God, and yet you are in the midst of them. And so, Lord, we lay down our stuff. You may do business with God right now. He calls you to freedom, and yet you can't bring your stuff. So lay down your stuff right now. Lay down the stuff you're worshiping. Lay down the stuff that seems bigger than him or more important than him. Lay it down. A simple way may say, God, anything and everything that keeps me from you, remove from my life. I lay it all down. And if you find that God is far away because of the burdens of life, just go through the list and surrender each thing to him. Lord, I give my health to you. Lord, I give my marriage to you. Lord, I give my children to you. Lord, I give my finances to you. Lord, I give my business to you. And as you do that, you'll feel yourself unburdened and joy can finally rise up within you. Because you're never meant to carry the things that you're carrying. He wants to carry them for you. Let's stand and worship together.